Where the sidewalk ends, my voice begins. The story of how writing became my lifeline. A literacy narrative by Marissa Heard. Before I share poems, essays, or the heavier stories I carry, I wanted to begin here with the story of how I became a writer. This literacy narrative was a class assignment that reignited my love of writing. It's the map of how I found my voice in a world that tried to silence me, and a love letter to language, survival, and the girl I used to be. Listen to the mussins, child. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be. These words have stayed with me since the day I opened Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein in the summer after first grade. My teacher gave me the book as a gift, and I read it so many times the cover wore out and the spine barely held together. It wasn't just a book, it was permission. A quiet promise that language could be playful, emotional, and alive. Back then, life offered me nothing but chaos and quiet demands to stay small. Reading and writing opened the windows when all the doors were closed around me. I grew up in spaces where my voice wasn't valued, but through writing, I refused to disappear. Writing literacy became my act of resistance against being silenced and underestimated. By 8 years old, I was making my own journals out of old school notebooks. What started as a love for getting lost in other people's stories became a desire to create my own. I filled my journals with thoughts, quotes, poems, and stories. By middle school, I was inspired by writers like Maya Angelou and Ellen Hopkins, and book series like Good America and Chicken Soup for the Soul, which showed me other worlds, different lives, relatable people, and ways to express myself I was never shown. They provided me comfort and words I wasn't brave enough to say out loud. Seeing what they could do with language made me believe that I could do it too. The way their words carried truth and emotion showed me that writing wasn't just words on a page, but that every word could hold an emotion I was able to let go of. Writing became my safe space. I wrote in quiet corners of the house, during lunch breaks at school, and on bus rides. I wrote when I was upset. I wrote when I was joyful. I wrote as if words were going to spill out of me unless I poured them onto paper. Every word was proof that I existed beyond what anyone else could see. My notebooks didn't judge me. They didn't tell me who I thought or who I ought to be or who I'd turn out to be. They let me imagine a life beyond the warnings that I'd fail, disappear, or become just like my mother. On rare occasions, my mom was sober. She was fully immersed in a James Patterson novel. She'd sit on the couch, so lost into the story that I honestly believed a fire wouldn't have pulled her away. I was always inspired by her to get lost in other worlds. My dad noticed I loved to write. He used to bring home small green notebooks from the military base, not because he cared about what I was writing, but because he liked that I was quiet and behaved when I had something to scribble in. So there I was again, filling journals with thoughts, quotes, poems, and stories. I've written about almost every major moment in my life. I developed as my writing developed, and vice versa. Suddenly, everything was a conduit for my writing. When I think about developing this literacy skill, I think about sitting on my old balcony in El Paso, Texas, watching a storm roll in from the distance, seeing how powerful Mother Nature could be, and letting that storm write for me. I've had flashes of trauma and memories too painful to be held, so I let that pain write for me. My anger wrote for me, my love wrote for me. Writing gave me control when everything else felt chaotic. It was my quiet rebellion, my way of saying, you can't silence me. By high school, writing wasn't an outlet for survival, it was an outlet for creative expression. I enrolled in a creative writing class that changed everything. My teacher was this chill, middle-aged white guy who sounded like Bill Clinton and had a love for music. We called him K-Boogie. He always had a way of making words feel exciting. He provided a safe space to explore different mediums and connect emotions with purpose. Coldplay music videos became prompts. Movies like Hoodwinked became lessons on point of view. Spoken word performances by Anis Mojani became windows into vulnerability. Anis Mojani taught me that not only can words carry rhythm with power and truth, but they can also create tension while embracing an audience. He showed me that people who were authentic and spoke up were accepted and respected. At this point, I'm writing short stories, screenplays, speeches, and poetry. One day, my teacher handed me back a collection of poems, covered in notes, and said, "You've got something." Those words peeled away any doubt I had carried for years. They gave me the confidence to do more and share more. My newfound confidence led me to a school club called Journey to Dream, where I shared my spoken word poetry as testimony at school assemblies. My writing was the driver of my life, and I rode wherever the words took me. Throughout my late teens and early 20s, I filled journals with thoughts, quotes, poems, and stories. But it also turned into blog posts, tweets, and statuses. By this time, I was less wrapped up in family chaos and more wrapped up in the push and pull of unrequited love. And so I wrote through love, heartache, and longing. Once again, I found myself feeling silenced, gaslit, and shamed for being me, as many others just do when they leave traumatic childhoods behind. I cried, loved, and wrote. This time I couldn't keep all of what I felt in my journals. It wasn't about sides or stories or revenge. It was about owning how I felt, owning my words, and letting it all out. So, in a manic fit of anger and the desperation to feel understood, I laid out years of journals and put together a collection of poetry which I self-published and sold online. This is the part where I'm supposed to tell you how empowered I felt, but honestly, I felt sick. It wasn't polished. In fact, there were plenty of mistakes. I never felt more exposed in my life. I poured everything into those pages. Love, loss, and resilience. My words, the rawest parts of me, were now public. Family, friends, and strangers could read what I once hid in journals. And they did. Someone commented online it was like reading in your diary. It was a surreal, full circle moment for me. Publishing that book was the ultimate act of vulnerability and the ultimate act of resistance. Sure, in that moment, I didn't feel empowered, but the act itself was empowering. I wasn't quiet anymore. I was loud with love. Writing had been my lifeline since childhood, scribbling in notebooks, whispered in poems, and spilled across journals. This was the moment I stepped into the light and was reminded how writing has always been there, been where I've gone to heal, to breathe, and to create when the world has tried to silence me. Writing gave me a space to exist fully when nothing else did. It gave me an outlet when I was drowning in silence, and it continues to save me now. These days, I watch my daughter scribble on pages and staple books to fill with thoughts, quotes, poems, and stories. She reads them to me as soon as they're created. Sometimes at night I read to her too. Listen to the never haves, then listen close to me. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be. Thank you so much for reading. I hope that you feel called to subscribe to my work.